The year that I judged, which I think was 2020, in the midst of lockdown, where we couldn't do very much other than focus on high quality reading, we selected a cracking winner, a book that just really leapt out at all of us as compelling, as very tender, very honest, very compassionate writing. Clean by Michelle Kirsch, which sort of twinned her experiences as a cleaner, a house cleaner, working for minimum wage and low pay, with her pretty devastating experiences of trying to recover from an addiction to drugs. And it was an eye-opener. The entire shortlist that year was an eye-opener in terms of the quality of writing that's being produced by debut writers over 50, and very encouraging for me as a writer at that time approaching 50, about what was possible. I think it's so important to not only encourage but reward debut writers to produce excellent work over the age of 50. In fact, it's kind of self-evident. It's sort of mind-boggling to me that there are so few prizes that recognize work from writers in that category, because it's obvious, isn't it, that the older one is, the more life experience and opportunities for reflection and maturing and really thinking carefully about things that one will have had. And all of those, I think, are essential ingredients that go into forming a writer. And it's also, unfortunately, and I know this from experience, a stark reality that many people simply have other things to do when they're young. They've got families to raise, they've got money to earn, they've got mortgages to pay. And sometimes the only opportunity to really take the time and sit down and put that work that you've had bubbling away inside of you for so long on the page is when you're older and you've got some of that stuff out of the way. So I think prizes like the Christopher Bland are an absolutely essential feature of the literary landscape for that reason.
I was one of the judges in 2021, and the winner we picked was a book by Pete Paphides called Broken Greek. That was a nice punning reference to his Greek family. Uh, and what was amazing about this book was that it was a memoir in some ways, a very vivid memoir, but it was almost entirely constructed around the music that he was listening to and making at the time. And it was brilliant in the sense that it managed to bring those kind of two senses together. You know, the idea that you were hearing what he was listening to at the same time as learning about his life story. So it was extremely clever, and we all enjoyed it hugely. I think it's really important to have a prize for a debut writer who doesn't fit the traditional image of a debut writer. I mean, we tend to think of new writers as being people who are young in age, you know, and we have a kind of, you know, a nice image and of the struggling young author, and of course we want to support them. But I think the important thing is that you can be a young writer in a more general sense at any age, and all new writers need a bit of help. I mean, you know, we tend to forget that Raymond Chandler, you know, didn't bring us Philip Marlowe till he was over 50. And recently I was just struck that Henry Marsh, who wrote that wonderful memoir of being a doctor, Do No Harm, he was over 50 too. There's a whole series of quite elderly young writers who I think this prize draws attention to and supports.
I've been so fortunate to have been a judge for the Christopher Bland Prize. It was honestly such a privilege. One thing that always struck me was the courage of writers of any age to put themselves and their ambitions on paper. And I do think that the older you get, particularly over the age of 50, it's an opportunity. Sometimes you could perhaps think, I'm halfway through life, I'm halfway through a century. But when you think about it, you've got half a century's worth of experience and ideas and ambitions to put down on paper and stories to tell. And I just think we are so fortunate that people take the time, make the effort, and give themselves to paper, to the written word. For us, how lucky are we?